Hey guys, in this video we'll go over what's worth it to buy in the Patrigio event store that's running from June 5th to June 19th. Patrigio event is an interesting one as the guy only spawns during nighttime in BDO, which is from 10 PM to 7 AM in-game time. This lasts for about 40 minutes in real life time. Daytime lasts for 3 hours and 20 minutes, so you'll have to wait that amount of time for it to become night again. Keep in mind, this is a special NPC that only spawns in Velia. This is not the regular Patrigio NPC that has a random item you get for energy. This guy has its own shop and is in a different place in Velia, not the regular Patrigio place. You do not have to roll energy, you just buy things with silver. With all of that being said, let's look at the special items he has for sale and whether each item is worth it or not to buy. Starting from the top and the most expensive items, we have the Forest Path Wagon for 5 billion silver. If you were to craft this wagon by itself, it would take around 600 million in raw resources and 200 million additional silver if you price the workers working on building the Forest Path Wagon instead of other things like cooking utensils. Altogether, it's only about 800 million silver to craft it for yourself, but it does take quite a while and some micromanaging of your workers. However, even if you don't want to craft it yourself, you can pre-order these on the central market for around 2 billion silver, and they do fill out pretty quickly since it is worth self-crafting and selling on the market. This is way under Patrigio's price of 5 billion silver, so unless you are super impatient and can't self-craft or pre-order the wagon, I would stay away. The wagon is also no longer meta for leveling some types of horses, so really there's no big rush. Next up, we'll go over all the fail stacks, including the 150, 120, 90, 80, and 70 stacks. In general, I think the price of these fail stacks is kinda reasonable considering the price of making fail stacks and the time it takes. Of course, if you have an abundance of fail stacks like myself, then there really is no reason to buy these. Also, if you are able to make fail stacks yourself at a cheaper price, then of course it's not going to be worth getting these either. It really is up to the player and how much they think they can make fail stacks for. I think for most people though who need fail stacks and don't really like self-crafting them, this is a pretty reasonable price. I personally am not going to buy these since I have a ton of stacks, but I would say they are priced pretty well. Next up is the Krogdalo's Horse Gear box. It's just really not going to be worth buying since you can basically pre-order these at half the price. Now if for some reason the server you're on people don't sell them and you can't be asked to craft them yourself, either through slowly grinding or using the monthly horse gear boxes, 3 billion silver is only double the base price of these, so it's not too much of a premium to pay if you simply cannot get it another way. I wouldn't recommend getting these, but if you have no other choice, then it's not that bad. The buff that getting the horse gear gives is pretty nice, so even if you overspend, it's not that bad. Next up is the Mythical Censer. This is a really interesting one since it costs about 1 billion to self-craft, but it takes a lot of mats that are hidden behind doing dailies, weeklies, and other things. You are basically paying 2 bill extra to get these at a faster rate. Unlike some of the other items on the list, I personally think it is justifiable to pay the extra 2 billion to get this item. One of the reasons is because there is a quest that allows a player to choose either 5 Mythical Censers or choose a dream horse of their choice that has all the skills already learned at 100%. Most maxed out dream horses are around 12 to 13 billion on the horse market, and to be able to get all the skills pre-leveled even after resetting your horse, and the ability to choose the gender for later on, I think it would be worth getting these for maybe 15 to 16 billion silver. Most players, however, did choose the 5 Mythical Censers to try and push a tier 10 as fast as possible, and I think that is a reasonable choice. However, if you value the fully maxed skills dream horses at around 15 to 16 billion, each censer would be more than 3 billion since the alternative to getting the dream horse was 5 censers. Even if you use the market rate for random dream horses, each censer would still be worth 2.4 billion. Because of how much players value Mythical Censers and don't like doing daily and weekly quests, I honestly think that 3 billion silver to buy a censer isn't bad at all. If you are pushing to get your tier 10 horses, I think it can be a pretty good pickup. This is probably one of the more controversial takes in this video, but definitely look at it yourself to see if getting the censer is worth it to you. I will definitely be taking some time to decide for myself as I already have a tier 10 horse, but I want to get all 3 eventually. Next up is Garmoth's Horn. This gives you a young Crimson Dragon and falls into the same category where you can pre-order the young Crimson Dragon at a third of the price and you can slowly get them over time. Garmoths are a lot easier to do, so getting the young Crimson Dragon is a lot more common. The HP that the young Crimson Dragon gives is also not used other than in PvP, so it's not the biggest item to rush. I think this is a little bit too expensive and it's better to slowly wait and do Garmoths plus pre-order the young Crimson Dragons. But if you have a bunch of silver, then it's not that bad of a thing to pick up. Next is the set of items, the boss statues. These aren't going to be worth it for the buff would only be used in uncapped PvP, and I honestly don't think anyone is really going to do that. If you are PvEing, you can just get the 15 AP from other house buffs. These are mostly just going to be for decoration in your residence, and I think that most players who value decorating their residence would be willing to self-grind these statues themselves to make it more meaningful. You can obtain all these statues just by doing world bosses and collecting a rare drop. Again, if you really like the look of the statues, you can pick it up as 2 billion isn't that much, but I don't really think it's worth it. Next up is the Pit-a-Pat Petal. You can buy 3 for 1 billion silver each. This is really weird since you still need 10 to get a unique pet that doesn't really do anything, just looks nice. Since you can only get 3, you still need 7 other petals from farming. If you're patient enough to farm for 7 petals, I really don't see why you would need to spend 3 bill on the remaining 3. I don't think this is worth it, especially since you can't even rush the entire mole without farming, you still need to farm for the other 7 petals. Next up is the Master's Special Stuffed House Buffs that are going to be around 2.5 times more expensive than pre-ordering it on the central market. They're 1 bill instead of 400 mil. However, with that being said, a lot of people aren't willing to hunt for themselves and pre-ordering can be pretty slow. If you grind a lot, having the 15 AP house buff is definitely still going to be worth it for 1 billion, as getting 20 to 30 hours of 15 AP can be nice. Even at 1 billion silver, it's still less silver per AP compared to Perfumes of Courages. If you don't grind as much and can slowly pre-order these on the central market, then definitely do that since it's cheaper, but buying these for 1 billion may be okay for some endgame grinders. Next is the Kutum's Leaves, which can give you a La Orzeca helmet or armor if you get 100 of each type of leaf. You can buy 100 of each leaf for 200 mil each, but that would mean that the total helmet and outfit set would cost you 40 billion silver. I personally don't think this is worth it since you get these leaves from grinding pretty good zones that most people will eventually grind. It is also a pretty fun grind slowly getting these leaves. I would recommend against buying these, but if you refuse to grind, then this is basically the only other way to get this outfit other than fishing. So it is still up to the player whether they want to buy or not. It's just pretty expensive in my eyes. Next up is 100 Laila's Petals for 150 million silver. At maximum sweet honey wine price, a petal can be worth about 2.1 million silver each, making this box worth it. However, since this box came out, it has tanked to 700k per wine instead of 1.6 million, making each petal around 900 million silver, including the feather procs, which mean you'll still lose money on average. However, wine does sit at max price sometimes, so if you are willing to wait a bit, you can get money on average. I would say if you need to reroll fairies or you really need feathers, it can be worth it since you have a good chance of getting feathers or a decent base fairy to level up skills. This isn't a required pickup in any means, but it's not a bad deal. Next is the Transform Crystals for 100 million silver. This is pure roleplay. If you want one of these transformation scrolls and are willing to spend 100 million silver, it's not very expensive and can be pretty fun. PA does give out these transformation scrolls during events, but if you missed one and aren't willing to wait for the event to come around again, this can be a pretty fun pickup. Next is the bundle of 500 crow coins for 100 million silver, and this pack can be kinda worth it if you need memory fragments since they sit around 4 million each. If you buy these crow coins and trade them for memory fragments every week, you can get about 111 million worth of memory fragments. Now of course, if you sell it back to the market, you'll lose silver, but if you can use the memory fragments, this can be nice. Of course, you can also trade in things for the other items in the Crow Coin shop, so if those interest you, 100 million per 500 isn't the worst thing in the world. It's not an amazing trade, but it's not awful. Overall, I would say that if you don't really care about memory fragments or Koroks, this can be a skip, but not an awful pickup. Next up is the 5 Perfume of Courages for 50 million silver. This is definitely worth it as you can sell them for 30 million each at 150 million silver total. Even if you don't use these, you can just sell them on the central market, so definitely pick up this pack no matter what, as you will always get extra silver. Next up is the sturdy forest treads are not worth it at all, since you can buy their products for less than 50 million each. If you are on a server where it's more expensive for some reason and you really need the extra HP, you can pick these up, but for most people this is a really bad deal. Just buy the pre-made whale pots on the central market. The horse enhancement mat boxes are worth it if you are enhancing a horse. This is better silver per enhancement mat than buying it on the central market, since these mats give about double the ones on the market. If you aren't ever going to enhance your horse, it can be a skip, but if you are ever going to enhance a horse, this is definitely worth it. Next up is Marni's fuel. It's going to be super cheap as they are selling 10 for 20 million, and they usually go for 10 million each. If you are going to tag other characters and you don't have a huge stockpile of fuel, I would definitely recommend picking these up. Next is the Radiant Shakatu seals. These are obviously super amazing and worth 10 million each no matter what. Since worst case, you can just trade 10 for 100 million and have no difference. I would recommend every player pick these up no matter what. Next up is the Lifeskill items like Giovan Grolin, Book of Florin, and Lara's Warm Black Teas. I would say if you are ever going to Lifeskill, these are super cheap and definitely worth it to pick up. They all provide pretty good value, and for 2 million each, they're definitely worth it. After that is the utensils, which are 4 million each. It's the same thing. If you are going to cook or do alchemy, definitely pick these up. It's going to be worth it. If you compare these to the advanced utensils, 4 million for one makes these give you about 5 times the silver value at the very minimum. In the end, there are some pretty cool items being sold. If you are impatient and have a lot of silver, there are some pretty good options. For every player, I would recommend getting the Radiant Shakatu seals and the Perfume of Courages at the very least. These are no-brainer good items unless for some reason Perfume of Courages are weird on your server. The cheap Lifeskill items, I would recommend any player who wants the Lifeskill definitely to get. The stacks, crow coins, and petals are going to be a little bit more marginally good, and they can provide value, but you have to know how to use them. Other than that, the other items like the Krog gear, wagon, housing things, and leaves are really overpriced and only usable if you're super rushed and your server does not have these items on sale. Either way though, I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you all next time.